Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Denzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Denzel. I hope you had a great weekend. Kind of a sad weekend for us here at Red State Talk Radio. If you've listened to any of the shows earlier today, I'm sure that those other guys and gals have mentioned that our leader, the guy who created Red State Talk Radio out of nothing, I'm going to guess it's going on 6 years now, Primo Mondone, died this weekend. I didn't find out till last night. He died on Saturday. I guess he had a heart attack. His daughter found him at his computer. I'm led to believe he might have been doing something related to Red State Talk Radio. And she found him on Saturday sometime, and I didn't even find out until last night. Was totally shocked by it because I just talked to Primo a couple weeks ago, and I've known that, and as you know, maybe you've heard me mention before, I've been with Red State Talk Radio for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in June, and he was the guy I contacted, meaning he was the head guy, about putting my show on here. Never met him in person, always a good guy to talk to, but I knew that he had some health issues. And when I talked to him last time, like I said, about 2 weeks ago, I'd even specifically asked him about it, and he gave me the impression that he was doing just fine. But as we know, you just never can tell. People are having heart attacks all the time. People who had no other health issues in their lives. I'm reminded of Jason Bone, who's a golfer who on Friday had to be taken to the hospital, and it turned out that he had a mild heart attack. Guy around my age had never had any health issues before they discovered that one of his main arteries, 99% of it was blocked. So you just never can tell. And then we know people who, I know of a woman this past year who was healthy her whole life, got diagnosed with a brain tumor, and 2 weeks later she was dead. Never had a health issue in her life, discovered that, and 2 weeks later, boom, gone. So I was a little shocked by it. I was at the gym when I got the email from Don Newen, who is the other guy now who runs Red State Talk Radio, and you know him from the show that he does with Donna Fiducia, Cowboy Logic. I got an email from him saying that Primo died. So rest in peace, Primo. I wish I would have gotten to meet him in person sometime. I never did. He lived in Tennessee. I live here in Florida. But he was always good to me, always willing to listen to me when I'm talking about. I'd call him or email him and would end up on the phone talking about my show or how to get more listeners in social media and, you know, the show statistics that he sends out every month. I had a couple in-depth conversations about it, and he was always patient and helpful. And really, I think, knew what he was doing, starting this from nothing to it being a point where we are, having, new, better numbers month after month after month. And a lot of that, of course, can be credited to Primo. So he died this weekend. Dang shame. Rest in peace. Where we're gonna go from now, I'm hoping nothing's going to change. I'm gonna keep doing these shows no matter what. So I'm not sure that anything's really going to change, at least for the short term. Maybe something will change in the long term. But as long as Red State Talk Radio is here, I'll be doing my show, and we'll just have to hang on to that for now. In other news, I had my card used by somebody this weekend, so I had to get a new bank card. I think I got my number ripped off, because I have the card. Some number ripped off when I went to Fort Lauderdale for the Iron Maiden concert last night. I went to a Steak and Shake, and I think I told you I had to wait for my order for 45 minutes. I think somebody there when I gave them a card to pay, copied my numbers. So on Friday night, Citibank lets me know that my numbers were being used in LA at a Target. So that happened this weekend. Trivia Championship this weekend. I think the people who run it messed up the numbers. I think my team should have won the overall title. We had a great Saturday. But I think they added up wrong, and we ended up coming in second, which is something I'm going to have to sort out later this week. The Academy Awards were this weekend. The only thing I caught regarding them were Sarah Silverman, followed by Sam Smith singing the James Bond song. That's all I saw of it. It was even too much, frankly. So, but I had a good weekend. But, the downer with Primo dying. Trivia team doing well, though I think we got screwed over. So, interesting, weird weekend. That's all I can really communicate to you. So, email you can email me at edwarddenzel@reagan.com. And you can follow me on Twitter, Denzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. By the way, if you've looked for my books on Amazon, they're not on there for now because I'm going to be using them to send parts of them out to agents in my effort to get a literary agent. And it's not a good idea to have books for sale that then you're trying to find an agent at the same time. So I've had to take my books off of Amazon for the time being. So that's why I won't be talking about them during the show. When that changes, I'll let you know. So there you go. Let's get to the show. Ben Sasse, this guy from Nebraska, man, has he come on the scene fairly quickly, hasn't he? It just shows you that if you have the courage to be a conservative, and I'll admit, it's not hard being a conservative in Nebraska. I know not long ago they did have a Democrat senator, was the Bob Kerrey. I think that was who it was. It wasn't, of course, John Kerry. It was Bob Kerrey. But it's not hard to be a Republican and a conservative Republican in Nebraska. But I think that Ben Sasse, last name S-A-S-S-E, is a little bit more than that. He's not probably one of the better-known senators simply because he's a newer guy. He's one of the youngest senators in the Senate. I think he's even younger than Marco Rubio. I know he's younger. I think he's younger than I am. And so he's had a lot of accomplishments in his life. And I've heard him do some interviews on Ricochet.com and elsewhere, and he's very impressive. Very impressive. And in fact, I would say that somewhere down the road, I think that depending on what goes on, of course, this year, that you could imagine Ben Sasse, or is it Sasse or Sass? I'm just going to say Sasse, even though that's kind of weird. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, as you know, I don't have a TV, but I listened to some interviews, and I just really don't remember how his name was pronounced. But Ben Sasse, I could see him somewhere down the road running for president of the United States. And I would be very happy if he's going to continue with what he's doing to, support him and say, some nice things about him. Of course, he won't be getting any money from me, and I won't be going to any of his events or anything, but I can imagine being pretty happy if he chooses to run for president. Once again, depending on what goes on this year. The reason I say that is I sent an email to a friend of mine this weekend saying, this Ben Sasse guy, man, he's really good. I think he really has a future. He's an up-and-comer. And I said, that is if President Trump doesn't assassinate him first. Now, why would President Trump want to do that? Well, Ben Sasse has come out and said that he will not vote for Donald Trump if he is the Republican nominee. And this, we are starting to see this division happening. In fact, I had emailed this same friend of mine a week ago, 10 days ago, and just pointing out how, this division is happening, not in the Republican Party, and we'll get into that, but just in what you would call conservative media. There is the National Review, RedState.com, the other Red State, HotAir.com, Town Hall, Weekly Standard side. And then on the other, you have Breitbart.com, Drudge Report. I would say, in my opinion, Fox News, most of the conservative radio establishment going, they've definitely broken into two groups. Something that was not as evident, of course, a year ago, or even 6 months ago. They've definitely staked out their territory. And within those two groups, there is not much wishy-washiness going on. And although I will give credit where credit's due, even though, to my estimation, Breitbart.com as a whole seems to be in the tank for Trump. But it seems, on the other hand, that Ben Shapiro, the guy who's supposed to be running things over there, it doesn't sound like much of a Trump guy to me. So I don't know exactly all that, but it seems to me that Breitbart.com is definitely in the tank for Trump and does not give him as hard a time as he should be given there. Well, Ben Sasse has come down and on the side, I guess, of the National Review side and saying he's not going to vote. And it seems like since then, and we know that there's this hashtag, if you aren't on Twitter, you wouldn't understand what I'm saying, but the new hashtag out there is Never Trump, meaning there are people, Republicans, who have said they will never vote for Donald Trump, ever. And this is growing in momentum. As I've told you, and to me, as you know, all of these people are, newcomers to this compared to myself. I told you back last July, there's no way that I vote for Donald Trump. I don't care who the Democrat is. I don't care what else goes on. I don't care who Donald Trump would happen to pick as a vice presidential partner to him. I'm not doing it. And what is going on? See, it's more than just, I think, people sticking to their principles. Although that's what I would say that I'm doing, and I would say that that's probably where the attitude of most of these people. I think also it's the fact that they don't want to be blackmailed by being afraid of whoever the Democrats nominate, and if that person would end up being president, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. By the way, Hillary Clinton had a big weekend. I guess this just goes to show that Bernie Sanders, as I've kept saying, just can't see Bernie Sanders getting the nomination. She's just going to roll over him from now on. He's had his place. He's going to continue to get a lot of votes, but he's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to be blackmailed, us never Trump people. We're not going to you're not going to scare us, the Trump people, and other Republicans who are getting behind Donald Trump, like Chris Christie and Jeff Sessions, among others, going to try to scare us about what Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders could do to the United States. So you got to vote for Donald Trump. Because, see, that has worked. See, and maybe this is kind of the funny thing, if there is something humorous about all of this regarding Barack Obama, that it has been a bad 7 years. All right, it has been. We as conservatives have lost on many fronts. We've won some, but we've lost a lot. And it's not because of necessarily the Republican establishment or anything like that. The fact is, sometimes we just don't make the best arguments. And not that we're wrong, but we've been screwed over for John Roberts, for example. I don't know if you could have seen that coming or not. I'm not sure. Some people saw it coming, some people didn't. But when you've lived through something like what has gone on with Barack Obama, Not that we like Hillary Clinton, but we just imagine it's probably just going to be more of the same. It's going to probably be better in some ways and probably worse than others in others. And see, before Barack Obama, those people who were non-conservative would always tell us, well, you know how bad it's going to be if you get elected Democrat. You got to go along with John McCain. You got to go along with Bob Dole. You got to go along with George W. Bush. You got to go along with Bush 41 the second time around. They could say this because look at the Democrat. Well, we've done that. We've done it. And the way we look at it is we're just not afraid of it. It's bad. But what we find out is, yes, the country's going to pay for it, but maybe that's what it needs. And we can live with that. See, somebody can't blackmail you anymore when you eventually say, you know what, if that's what you're going to blackmail me with, then you know what, I'm just going to decide to live with it. I'm just going to live with whatever you want to expose about me or tell people about me or anything, in just our regular lives. But when it comes to you thinking we should go for Donald Trump simply because that's who the Democrat is, that's just not good enough anymore. Because we're simply not afraid of it. And you know what? There's no way you can make us afraid. You know why? Because your guy isn't much different. And in fact, we could argue in many ways that it would be worse. So there's more than just a principle. It's just not, I think, conservatives saying that, well, he's not a conservative and I'm not going to vote for him. That's where I started with Donald Trump back then. Of course, as you know, I don't think he's a very good guy either, no matter what his political affiliation is or anything else. I think that you can look at Donald Trump's life and easily see that. But I think that there maybe are some conservatives who might have thought about it, but when they also start thinking about, well, you got to vote Republican. And they start thinking, well, yeah, we've done that. We know what we've gotten. Not much. Not much. And this is why, and I could see, the point about this is I could see this 25 years ago. That worked 25 years ago. But when you know that you keep compromising on this guy and that candidate, and you see that things aren't going in your way in all of this, it does motivate people just not to take part. And I'll admit, I used to be in the opposite crowd. I used to say, you know what? Between Barack Obama and John McCain, you got to show up and vote for John McCain. Because Barack Obama is scary, this, that, and the other reason. And we'll get, eventually we'll get our way. Eventually this will all work out. No, it didn't. No, it won't. Listening to Rush Limbaugh for years, making that argument works for a while. But at some point, we have to see the fruits of us holding our nose. We have not. We as true conservatives have not. Now, the funny part about all this is the other, darkly humorous part, is that there will be people who will want to vote for Donald Trump this time who were mad about voting for John McCain in 2008 because he wasn't conservative enough. But somehow in 2016, Donald Trump is conservative enough. He is good enough. John McCain, they were ticked off voting for him. Now they couldn't be happier voting for Donald Trump. Those people are hard to understand to me. They're hard to understand. But I think getting back to Ben Sasse and some of these others who have now prominent conservatives who have said, no, I can't do this. This is going to grow. This is not going to go away. This is not going to go away. This is going to just become a bigger movement. And as you know, I've told you on this show, this is what I'm going to do for months. Haven't really tried to create a hashtag because of it. Because, truthfully, I think that people have to come to this kind of revelation in their own time. Because our tendency for decades has been the opposite. And I start saying, well, you can't, you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump and all of this. It flies in the face of decades of conservative thinking. So I start thinking, well, you start saying that. Maybe I've said it a few times, but I know when I think about the topic, I'm just thinking inside my own head of what my values are. And frankly, me personally, I just don't want to be connected to any of it. I don't want to be connected to it on either side. And once people start thinking about their own morality and their own integrity and values and whether they can sleep at night with the choices that they've made in their lives, I think more and more conservatives are looking at Donald Trump and saying, you know what, if I vote for him and then he gets to be president, I know the kind of guy and president he's going to be. That means I condone it, and that's too much for my conscience. And there's no amount of cajoling or anything else that usually can change people from that way of thinking. Now, I know there's probably some people out there right now who are saying they won't. And if Donald Trump gets the nomination, they end up voting for him anyway. But I'm equally convinced that a lot of people are, in their own way, in the privacy of their own home, they're seeing Donald Trump quote Mussolini. They see how he doesn't want to talk badly about the Ku Klux Klan. They know about his business dealings that are shady. And it just, at some point, it just gets to be too much. And a guy like Ben Sasse, a new guy on the scene, when he's out there and makes a statement on his Facebook page that has gotten tons of attention, that has now okayed it. There is now a leader out there, an elected conservative leader, who has come out and said, this is wrong, and I'm not going to have anything to do with it. Now, the bad news for the Republican Party, if it wants to stick together, it has a problem on its hands. Because it can't take the risk of all of these people sitting home and getting, Donald Trump getting blown out. Because I'm still convinced that a lot of these people who are supporting Donald Trump in the primary process will end up voting Democrat in November. That's a lot of what I believe. I know there are a lot of conservatives who are supporting him, but a lot of these open primary states where Democrats can cross over, I'm convinced that given a choice between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, a lot of those people are going to pick Hillary Clinton. Still, I give Ben, the senator from Nebraska, however his last name is pronounced, I give him a lot of credit. And this is a big deal. These are definitely uncharted waters. When a senator of a particular party says he or she will not vote for that party's nominee, if that person ends up being the nomination, when was the last time that that's happened? That it cannot be very common. It cannot. Of course, we know it's very common for senators or congressmen to support a candidate. We know all the support and endorsements that certain nominees will get. But somebody from the same party saying, no, I'm not doing this. And to continue on this, there's another part to this, and it comes from something that I didn't get to last week, just didn't have the time, the shows. that, speaking, I mentioned Rush Limbaugh earlier, I saw a transcript. He was talking to some caller. Some woman called in. Was it her name Pam? Was it Pam? I forget. But it was a woman. I saw the transcript. I'm going to guess that Hot Air or Red State, somebody linked to it, because that's not generally something I'm looking for. But she called in, and she had some complaints. And then within him answering her, and he went off on some, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph after paragraph speech without allowing the caller to interject. He said that the GOP establishment, they're the ones to blame for the rising of Donald Trump. And I'm not going to disagree with that. Okay, I'm not going to, because of what has happened. Because of this rift that not so long ago was just the leaders of the party against those grassroots people. That was the case not so long ago. Now it's something different. Of course, Donald Trump would say that he's representing more the grassroots of the party. I don't believe that for a second. It's kind of broken off into three. Instead of two, there are now three competing interests. The leaders of the party, those people who support Donald Trump, and everybody else. Everybody else. And in that everybody else, I guess you could say the supporters of Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, to a lesser extent, Ben Carson and John Kasich, who either of those I think will eventually end up endorsing Donald Trump. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio are not going to endorse Donald Trump if he gets the nomination. That is just not going to happen. And of course, we could throw in the Trump camp, the Jeff Sessions people, the Chris Christie people, and all of those. So not too long ago it was that, but now it's two disputing parties. Now it's three. And so in a way, Rush is kind of right that kind of the blowing off of the grassroots for a while has created this. But let's be clear about something, Rush, and all of those of you who want to continue this thing. You know what keeps it going? Conservative media are the ones who have kept Trump going. It's not the establishment and the leaders of the party that continue Trump's popularity. It is all of the people who knew that Donald Trump is not conservative, who continued or do continue to this day, Leap Day 2016. They're the ones that continue to throw logs on the fire. It may be the party's arrogance, leaders in it, started that and built the fire. But you who continue to treat Trump like a king are the ones that keep that fire burning. And that's something that Rush or many others don't want to talk about. And that's how it gets to the point where a senator from Nebraska can publicly, not in private, not talking to his wife at night, saying, honey, I don't think I can do this. This is out in the public now. And who's to blame for that? To me, after all this time, it's conservative media who's to blame for now Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska and everybody else now breaking away. That's not the party leadership's fault. That's the conservative media who are supposed to be marketing conservatism to people. Conservative, I guess, entertainment as learning about conservatism, whatever you want to call it. They are the ones who are now causing all of us to go the opposite direction. The party hasn't. It's month after month of hoping somebody is going to take a stand against him who has a way of swaying people, and nobody does. And at some point, people are going to start thinking for themselves and realize, you know what, nobody's going to come to our rescue, so we're going to have to rescue ourselves by deciding, nope, we're going to get on the never Trump train out of town. Use a horrible cliche that I just thought off the top of my head. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to The Denser Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Talk radio the way the founding fathers would have done it.
I'm just a man trying to make his mark on history.
Red State Talk Radio.
Accuracy and range are a necessity. Now comfort is an option as well. Nemo Arms introduces the Omen 300 Win Mag. The Omen 300 is perfectly balanced for reduced recoil, creating sub-minute of angle accuracy. And fit for the tightest of tolerances. The Omen is offered in carbine or full-length models with a 10 or 14-round magazine. American-made, owned, and designed, Nemo Arms is setting a new standard in modern sporting rifles. Find out more at NemoArms.com.
Less than 2% of America's population volunteers to defend our nation. Though we rarely see them, we live the benefits of these heroes' sacrifices in the freedom we know and the safety we feel. Each and every day, the Gary Sinise Foundation serves our nation by honoring our defenders, veterans, first responders, and their families. We do this by creating and supporting unique programs designed to entertain, educate, inspire, strengthen, and build communities. The Gary Sinise Foundation has grown because the need has never been greater. Together, we'll improve the lives of thousands of American heroes and their families day in, day out, all year long. While we can never do enough to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, our veterans, our first responders, and the families who stand by them, we can always do a little more. Join us. Visit GarySiniseFoundation.org.
Hi, I'm Gil Fulbright. The people who run my campaign, they've made this commercial, and I'm in it. This campaign, it's not about me. It's about crafting a version of me that'll appeal to you. A version that visits random work sites with paid actors pointing at things. A version of me that doesn't find old people loathsome or pointless. Has a conventionally attractive yet curiously still family. Listening to my constituents, legislating, these are things I don't do. What I do is spend about 70% of my time raising funds for re-election. I'd do anything to stay in office. My name's Gil Fulbright, but hell, I'll change my name to Phil Goldbright, or Bill Fulbright, or fill up my mouth with farts. These are the things that are important to me. And these are the fine people that finance my campaign. Now, in order to do these things, I have to stay in office. And to stay in office, I have to keep these guys happy. Now, if any of these things make these guys unhappy, well, my hands are tied. So come November, the choice is clear. You want another spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? Or a spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? I'm Philip, a mouth with farts, and I approve this message.
We're back at the Denser Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk about Ben Sasse and his statement that he would not vote for Donald Trump. There's another part to this. And I know, see, when you go to all of the websites that I do, you hear a lot of different arguments, and you end up reading the comments section. You know the different arguments that my side is making, the different arguments that the Trump people are making, if there is a coherent one out there. Okay. And then you have those people, they are that third group who say, hey, they're not a big fan of Trump, but they're just going to vote for whoever the Republican just because he'd be the Republican, and somebody is eventually going to be the Democrat nominee. What I want to say about this is the problem you have with that, what I read from leaders within the Republican Party, or should I more specifically conservatives who have admitted that Donald Trump isn't conservative. And he's a little bit of a hothead, and he can go off here and go off there. There's still this idea amongst many of them, and dare I say it, Rush and Laura Ingraham, Ann Coulter, all of them, that, well, they're in a way because they know the guy, that, they can control him. That, well, once he gets the nomination, we'll start talking to him about what he's doing. You know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like the same argument that was made. Well, John McCain, we elect him. If we nominate him, he's going to be good enough. Whereas we know that John McCain, if he would have become president of the United States, he wouldn't have governed from a conservative perspective. Do I think he would have been a better president than Barack Obama? Yeah. Do I think Mitt Romney would have been a better president than Barack Obama in 2012? Yeah. But certainly they wouldn't have governed from a perspective of conservatism. They would have been doing their own things, and there would have been nothing in conservative media that could have changed their minds at all regarding John McCain, Mitt Romney. They're just going to go and they would have just done their own things. Very much like George W. Bush, good guy, not conservative. Conservative media didn't control him at all. But he got a pass because of his attitudes towards terror, pretty much. And him fighting it. And what he wanted to do to protect the United States. And that's why it's so funny that suddenly all these conservatives all these years later said they wouldn't have gone into Iraq. Meanwhile, back then, they were cheering it even after all of that. And that's why I continue to be consistent on that. Unlike what I would say these chickens who have bailed out over the years regarding Iraq. So if we know that in a couple of these cases, at least with George W. Bush, that conservative media couldn't get to him and conservatives couldn't get to him enough, then why do those people think now that they would have any influence on Donald Trump at all? At all. And in fact, we know as far as being individualistic, to put it nice, he's worse than all of those other guys. And I usually I use individualistic in a nice way. I'm not using it in a nice way this time. Donald Trump is off on his own tangent well outside Mitt Romney, John McCain, or George W. Bush. So how people can think conservatives, now the people who aren't conservative, they're probably going to get exactly what they want. Maybe. Who knows? But conservatives, I can assure you, are not. So when leaders in our movement say, well, get to them, and, that's better. We know we won't have any influence if Hillary Clinton gets in there. Why do you think you're going to have any influence with Donald Trump? Why? There is no proof of that. There's no proof of that. In fact, you have more proof, despite everything bad that we think about Hillary Clinton, for very good reasons. Within her family, between her and her husband, her husband has done more to work with conservatives back in the 90s than Donald Trump ever has. Ever has. And Bill Clinton is on the record for doing so. Now, Hillary Clinton, not as much. But just within the family, she at least knows what that looks like. And she should understand, like the rest of us do, that Bill Clinton is still regarded, despite Monica Lewinsky, as a decent president. When he's not conservative, he was a liberal, but he saw conservatism and worked with it, at least on a few things. There's no proof that Donald Trump has done anything anywhere with conservatives at all. Whereas at least Hillary Clinton knows what it looks like and knows that her husband benefited from it. At least in a very small way. Dare I say it, Donald Trump knows that he has never benefited from conservatism. Why? Because he's a thug. Because he's a crony capitalist. Because I think in the end, he really hates the little guy. He will exploit him or her, that little guy, that little girl. All right? Am I making myself clear enough on all of this? I'm just going to keep talking, Just got to keep talking about it. I know I beat myself into the wall sometimes with this, and I stray away from it, talk about other things, but I think somewhere in there you have to keep talking about it at least a few times a week. Because within all of this, if there are people who want to learn about conservatism, this is a very good way to learn about it. What conservatism is and what conservatism isn't. And this has always been my fear regarding conservatives getting behind politicians who aren't. Because then new people are coming into the process, learning about politics for the first time, hearing the word conservative and saying, well, what's that mean? What is that? What is that? I hear liberal, I hear conservative. What do these things mean? And then they see a bunch of well-known conservatives supporting Donald Trump. You know what that person thinks? Oh, Donald Trump must be conservative. Oh, Mitt Romney must be conservative. Oh, John McCain must be conservative. And we know none of them are. This is what bothers me. Is this what we're trying to do, what some conservatives in media are trying to do, is this a good way to teach conservatism? It isn't. It isn't. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised, given that we have so many conservatives in the United States who march their kids off to liberal public schools every day. Now you see why that's such a big deal to me. So I'm part of the Never Trump crowd. And I'm going to stay there. I've seen the years of Barack Obama. They've been bad. Probably worse in some ways than we thought. And frankly, probably in at least a couple ways, a little better than we thought. But still not good. But I will pick the last 7 years of Barack Obama over what I think Donald Trump could do to the United States. I believe that. Just something different about this guy, even though I think he and Barack Obama come from the same mold. I've written in my notes here, and because research is allowed for this show. How would I define conservatism? We define it, we think about small government and people. And this is one of the problems that I think, and not just with Donald Trump, but with liberals and other types. You see, to me, conservatism, when I'm talking about this, I want you to know how I view conservatism. Conservatism is an ideology that admits that it doesn't know everything. It's willing to admit that, you know what, we just don't know. We'll have to look into it. Whereas, as you maybe heard me say before on this show, that liberalism is the ideology of know-it-allism. You have a group of elites who absolutely 100% know how people should be running their own lives. Despite how they market themselves, we know that everything that they push as far as legislation goes is all about running people's lives. So they have a bunch of know-it-alls there. And see, that's who I think Donald Trump is. He's a know-it-all. If you knew him, you'd call him a know-it-all and avoid him at all cost. Whereas we as conservatives, we are humble enough and modest enough to know that, you know what? There's just a lot we don't know about how people want to run their own lives. We have a certain morality, a certain character, that humility. And this is probably what you heard last week when I was talking about doctors and nurses in contrast to politicians and laws regarding health care. We admit, I'll admit, I don't know what it takes necessarily I have the general idea simply because I have an economics background to understand what I think economically, from an economic standpoint, supply and demand we need in this country. But here's what I know. A bunch of politicians aren't going to be able to set that up. The people who understand the healthcare marketplace best are people who live it every day. That's what I believe. That's how we as conservatives should think. We understand that there's going to be unintended consequences of this decision or that decision. We know that opening markets up and taking away regulation, it's not going to be perfect. It's just going to be better than what we have right now. We don't sell perfection. Why? Because we don't believe humans are perfect. Liberals, they do sell perfection. You just follow us and everything will be okay. Don't know. Know-it-alls. And when they go wrong, they never take any blame for it. They don't want to take any blame for any of this. So that's another way I think that you can think about conservatism. And I think when I explain that, you can understand why I explain my opposition to Donald Trump and others like him in the way that I do. Because I get concerned not just about politics, but about anything in life when a person, just any topic that comes up, it's like they've lived it every day. And that's not the case. The truth is, your average person has very little experience compared to everybody else combined. I can understand a person knowing a lot about one topic, two topics, but anything? And that's the way, to me, liberals sound. That's the way Donald Trump sounds to me. And that's worrisome because then I know, when I hear that, I know that person is lying. Or that person is deluding himself or herself, which is equally bad. Oh, I can do this. And then when they get into it, oh no, they find out that they can't, screwing themselves and everybody else who chose to follow. And we've all probably run into those situations in our lives. Frankly, conservatism is the ideology of we're not sure. And that's why we fall back on people's rights, private property, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and then everybody you're just going to have to work this out yourselves. Okay? That's just what you're going to have to do. Liberals don't think that way. They don't. It's another way to think about conservatism. Something else regarding all of this. It goes to this idea, I went to ricochet.com. This has to do with political correctness and how we as conservatives treat it. I think that this is one of those issues where we've overblown it. I was at ricochet.com, and there was a guy in there who's obviously a Trump supporter. That Donald Trump, the reason he's popular and the topic that he surely owns is the idea of political correctness. Or being anti-PC, I should say, to be more succinct, precise. And is that really true? Is he the owner of that topic? And likewise, is it such a big topic in the United States that enough conservatives would get behind him regarding it? Now, see, once again, I say, I realize that political correctness is bad. I realize that controlling of speech is bad. And I know that it goes on in the United States. But here's what I also know. To my knowledge, outside of college campuses where liberals run the show, is it happening in the public forum? To my knowledge, nobody's trying to shut down any conservative site on the internet. To my knowledge. Nobody has tried to shut down Red State Talk Radio, to my knowledge. I realize that Twitter allegedly has something against conservatives and they had these thought police and everything else. Well, guess what? That's a private entity. If they don't want certain discussions on their social media site, guess what? Because they have private property rights, they can do that. I can't help it that they like liberals more than us. That's just the way it goes. It's not illegal. That's the important part. You do not have freedom of speech to be on there. Twitter is not sending anybody to jail because of this. They can do whatever they want. That is also supposed to be the conservative position. I realize that some of these conservatives, well, they're anti-PC and all of this. Once again, they get to choose. But I think that political correctness, although it is bad, it is not what ails the United States. I make this speech regarding illegal immigration. Bad topic. But it's not going to fix... We fix illegal immigration. It's not going to fix our economy. It's not going to fix terrorism, in my opinion, for the most part. Maybe a little bit, not a lot. It's not going to help. It's not going to fix our trade wars if they even exist. Same way with political correctness. It's not like political correctness is holding any conservatives back. What I think, though, is that a lot of conservatives have latched onto this regarding Donald Trump, whereas saying that he's anti-PC. No, he's not. He's anti-PC until somebody starts speaking out against him, and then we know what happens. He starts talking about controlling the media just like he did this past weekend. And so he's the polar opposite of those people who want political correctness but aren't politically correct. They're both equally bad. They're both equally terrible. And they both equally mislead the leaders who believe, whether it's the universities or Donald Trump, they're both misleading their supporters. In neither case are they being genuine, which is once again something that I think that has to be associated with conservatism. We have to be genuine about belief. We have to be humble about what we believe. And we also have to admit that we don't have all the answers, that we want to leave it up to individuals to figure it out. Donald Trump doesn't believe that. College universities don't believe that. Liberals don't believe that. And so we shouldn't have anything to do with any of them. Going back to Senator Sasse from Nebraska, I'm very happy that he did that. You've been listening to the Denzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can go to edwarddenzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find those shows at Podbean, Podomatic, SoundCloud, and YouTube. You can also go to edwarddenzel.com/book where you can download the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. listening to The Dental Domain on Red State Talk Radio.